Oh, hello. In this video, I'll show you how I set up my 3D printers using OctoPrint that's loaded onto a Raspberry Pi 4. I'll also show you how I automate this system so I can turn it on, start a print remotely, and then have it turn itself off once the print has finished. Thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Remember, great products start with great manufacturing. The first thing I'm going to do is install OctoPrint on a Raspberry Pi. Now I'm going to be using a 32GB SD card from SanDisk here. Also, I'm going to be using the SD card reader that came with my printer. So I'm just going to plug that into somewhere and plug it into my computer. It's going to say it's going to need to be formatted. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to install a whole new operating system on that thing anyway. And first of all, what we want to do is open up the Raspberry Pi imager. I'm going to go straight to choose OS. We're going to scroll down. We want other specific purpose OS. Scroll down a little bit more. 3D printing. Scroll down till we find OctoPrint. Select that. From here, we'll take the top one, which is the latest stable version. And we're going to choose our storage medium. So what I'm going to do, just to test it, I'm going to unplug it, plug it back in again. And there you go. We can see that it's found it down here. And we'll select that. We're going to hit next. And yes, I want to edit settings. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give it a host name. I'm going to call mine Enter3-3-V3, which is the name of my printer. I'm going to give it a username. Just going to change that to capitals there. And the passwords, let's give it a passwords. Next, I'm going to choose my Wi-Fi credentials. Now for mine, that's Wiz5. And also I'm going to put in my Wi-Fi passwords. Next, I'm going to select my country and my time zone and keyboard layout. For services, I'm going to enable SSH, keep that enabled. And then for options, if it is selected, deselect eject media when finished, as we're going to edit some files on the SD card. So I'll hit save there and then hit yes. Get a little warning saying that it's going to delete everything off the SD card. That's fine. And we'll do a time lapse. This may take a little while depending on your internet connection. It's a fairly big download. While we wait for that, you can take this opportunity to hit that like button. Thank you very much. Need a small run of PCBs? PCBWay's got you covered with high quality boards starting from just $5. But wait, that's not all. They can also assemble your components too and bring your projects to life hassle-free. And remember, it's not only PCBs. There's no need to order from a range of vendors, as PCBWay can do it all with their range of 3D printing and metal fabrication services. Whether you need FDM, metal, SLS printed, or even SLA, they've got the technology, the materials, and the power to bring your designs into the physical world. PCBWay is your one-stop shop for all things prototyping and manufacturing. Use the link in the description and unlock your creativity today. And there we go, it's finished. Next, I'm going to open up my computer. On the SD card itself, we'll open that up, and I'm going to edit two files. First of all, we want octopi.txt, so we'll open that up in our favorite editor. Now, by default, the OctoPrint camera setup comes in at 640 by 480. Well, the camera we've got is a widescreen, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that line. I'm going to paste it down on the next line so I can keep the old reference there. And I'm going to change this to 1920 by 1080. And I'm also going to change it to 20 frames a second as opposed to the default 10. So that's done. We're going to save that, Control S. And the other thing I like to do, which makes it a little bit more easier to set up, is I'm going to edit this Wi-Fi NM connection. So I'm going to open this up in Notepad++. And then in here, I'm going to put in my Wi-Fi SSID and password. So we look down in here under the Wi-Fi section. We can see here we've got the SSID. I'm going to replace that with mine, WizAir 5. And then a little bit further down, we can see we've got the set your password here. I'm going to put in my password for my Wi-Fi, and we shall Control S and save that. I'll close that down. And then one final thing I'd like to do here is I'm going to right click, make a new text document. I'm going to call it SSH and get rid of the file extension. That will come in handy later on if I want to log into the Raspberry Pi and change some of these files remotely. We'll go back to my PC and we can eject the SD card now. Let's get some stuff that the PiHut kindly sent me. We got power supply. These are pretty good. Get a few of these. They're really handy. They are 5.1 volts at 3 amps. Very nice. They sent me a Raspberry Pi, Pi Zero camera, and an SD card. We won't be using that. We'll be using our own one. And of course, the obligatory stickers. Put the camera to one side a minute, and then we're going to open up the Raspberry Pi. Thank you, PiHut. We'll take our SD card that we got programmed, and we're going to plug that in with the fingers facing upwards, like that. Then we're going to take the Pi Zero camera. Thing to note here is don't pull on these things because they'll just pop off. They're just friction fit. When you take it out, be careful. Pick it up with the lens. I'm going to use this cable. I did buy a longer one, got this one from Amazon. That'll be for the actual install, but for testing and setup, we'll just install this cable that came with it. On the camera itself, you've got a ribbon cable connector, and it's the same one on the Pi there. And all you do is get a nail and very gently just open that up a little bit. It won't come out all the way, but it will come out a few millimeters. And then grabbing the cable, fingers on the bottom. There's no friction here, so it will just slide in, and then just a little bit of pressure there, and then just push those clips back in nice and gently, and that'll keep it solid there. Same thing on the Pi. Use your nails, just lift that up a little bit. Again, fingers facing towards you. You can just about see the pins in the bottom of that connector there. So line those up. So it goes in there. Again, no friction there. Should go in quite easily. And we'll just push that down. And then just making sure that these are fairly even. You can push these in a little bit if it's not completely square. So next job, we'll connect up the power supply to the Raspberry Pi. And we'll get Home Assistant to find OctoPrint. Back on my desktop, I'm going to open up Home Assistant. And then on the Raspberry Pi, let's just plug that in and we'll switch on. Now, if I turn the light down a little bit, you should see there we've got the red light, which is power. And then right next to it, you'll see a little green light flashing. It's kind of like a hard drive light for the Pi. So we're going to let that run for a little bit. So OctoPrint's going to start up and connect to the Wi-Fi. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to wait for that light to stop flashing. And then when it stops flashing so fast, we don't get a notification in Home Assistant. But if I open up settings and devices, Home Assistant found it. So what we can do now is we can copy this IP address. We'll go to a new web page. We'll just paste that in. Then we get an OctoPrint setup wizard. So let's go through this. We'll go next. Not going to do a backup just yet. Access control. Now, this is a username and password for OctoPi itself. Obviously, I've already done this, so we'll do it again. So we'll give myself a username, give myself passwords, and we're going to create an account. Okay, I've logged in successfully. We're going to go to next. First of all, we're going to make sure that everything's connected online. So we're going to do a test host. Server is reachable. That's good. And then again here, we're going to make sure that it can connect to the internet. Name can be resolved. And then down here, I'm going to enable connectivity check. On to next, I'm going to disable anonymous tracking this instance. Plugin blacklist. Yes, I want to enable that just to make sure that no third-party plugins cause any damage to my system. Now, the camera. Let's take off the lens cap. I won't be able to see anything. And then just make sure it's working. So there we go. We have a camera, and we can also see that it's widescreen. Kind of blown out by the lights as well. Okay, next, default printer profile. So this is going on an Ender 3 V3 SE. Build plate volume, set this up for your printer. If it's the same as mine, it's 220 by 220 by 250. Everything else is default. And then we'll go to axes. That should all be okay. This printer comes with a 0.4mm nozzle and one extruder. Obviously, set this up for your printer. I'm going to keep everything else default. Hit next. Yes, I have read. Yes, I have read. Yes, I have read. And we're done. We're going to reload. And we can see there's a firmware update. So we're going to update that. So that's going to do its thing. We probably have to restart as well. So that's gone offline. We'll give it a couple of seconds. At the moment, we can see the hard drive light there. So we'll give that a minute or so, and then we'll hit reload. Okay, there we go. So final check. We can see the camera still working.
Hello.
Lovely, lovely. Next up, let's make sure that Home Assistant can interact with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear this off, put it to one side, and then go back to Home Assistant. Oh, look, it's found another one. Well, they should both be the same. So I'm just going to add one of them. And then in here, we want the username that we set up in OctoPrint. So in my case, that's, yeah, should be okay. So if I submit that, you can see now in OctoPrint, it's got an access request for Home Assistant. So I'm going to allow that. Again, we need to put in our passwords. If your password manager saved it, just hit that and confirm that. And then back into Home Assistant. I'm going to rename this because I've got two printers. So that's a V3. And this one is in the office. For some reason, it doesn't rename this. It's always nice to have the IP address, but I'm going to rename it again. So this is an Ender 3 V3. Okay, so if we go into the device itself, we won't see any data coming back from the printer because we haven't connected it yet. So a few of these won't be available, but the camera's there. We won't be using that. I'll show you a better way of using the camera. That's the setup done for OctoPrint and get it into Home Assistant. Next up, we're going to take this Raspberry Pi, put it inside the printer and connect it all up. Next up, we're going to prepare the Raspberry Pi to go inside the printer. Now, I've disconnected everything and I've also brought one of these heatsink and fan kits. So it comes with a heatsink for the top and a couple of fans. And then we've got a heatsink for the base as well. So let's install that. You can't reach that port when this is on. Put that in there. Sit it down, then we'll just lock that back in. And then we thread that through like so. Also, in this case, it comes with some heatsink pads, so we'll put those on as well. So I can put that to one side. The next thing I'm going to need is to supply the Pi with 5.1 volts. Now, I'm using one of these. This is a 5 amp one, so it should be more than enough. And also, I've got a USB-C cable. This one's probably okay, but we're going to check it anyway. And what I want to do is make sure that the colours represent what I'm expecting for a USB cable. So at the moment, we're running red and black here. So I'm just going to strip that off. I'm going to plug it into a USB power supply and see what's coming out of it. We've got the multimeter out. Okay, so I've got a USB extension lead here, and I'm just going to plug that into that and switch on. We'll switch that to 2 volts, and we're just going to make sure that between the red and the ground, we've got 5 volts, and it's the right polarity. So we can see there that this cable is marked correctly. So red is 5 volts. Most cables will have a black, but this one's got a braid there, which is 0 volts. So whatever cable you use, just make sure that the polarity matches the colours. Pull this back a little bit. I'm just going to tidy up this cable so it's reasonably neat, and then we'll strip that red off. Bit of a mess here. Let's tidy this up. Obviously, this is going to go on the out, plus and minus. Let's put a blob of solder on each one of those. Now, this one's got a braid on it, so I'm going to put a bit of heat shrink on there for my one, just to keep it out of the way and stop it from touching anything. So, and then I'm just going to shrink that down with my lighter. And then next, I need to input. So this is going to be powered by the printer itself. So nice blob of solder on that side, and then red and black wire. I'm going to obviously, as I normally do, cut more off than I need. I can always cut it shorter. So nice blob of solder on each one of these. So the one on the bottom there is in line with the black that we have there. So that's 0 volts. And that one is plus volts. Right, so we've got USB-C coming out. That will plug into the Raspberry Pi. We've verified that the cable is actually red and black for positive and negative. And then we've added a couple of wires there that we're going to connect to our printer. Let's open up the printer. So first of all, take out the SD card if it's still in there. And then the way I've got this orientated, the SD card is at the bottom with the power supply input. And in this top corner is where your display is. Several screws to take out. Lazy boy screwdriver. And then I left the middle one so that it doesn't fall out on me if I take the last screw out. And then very carefully, we'll pull that out because this ribbon cable here that goes round is on a little catch. So we need to make sure that we just move that back and release the cable from it. A bit tricky, it's a bit tight in there. Now that's off, is I can take this fan off. Unfortunately, the plug for the fan is glued in. We get rid of the base. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this round so I can get access to not only the power supply, but also I need to be able to plug it in. So very carefully, and then we're just going to sit the printer on its back. You will be crushing the cable, so do be careful on there. And then I'm just going to put the fan over here somewhere. So just get the fan out of the way for the time being. You can see here I've got plus and minus, and we've already got the red and the black there. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure there's nothing on my desk that's going to short it out, so I'm going to connect the red and black from the buck converter to the red and black of the power supply there. So grab a screwdriver, and then there's 2 terminals here. I'm just going to connect the red in, and I'm going to fold that over. It's a little bit tight in here, so the tweezers will come in handy, I think. Yeah, and then we'll do the same for the red. Again, just going to bend that over a little bit, and we'll put that in the plus volts. And we'll just clamp that down. Now, the main supply is coming in here, so let's grab the mains lead. I'm going to plug it in, but I'm not going to turn it on just yet. So I'll plug that in there. And we'll get the multimeter out. Get that set to 20 volts. Just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to use my crocodile clip extensions on here. So clamp on to plus and minus out of the buck converter there. And let's adjust this down to 5.1 volts. These things take quite a lot of turns, so just walk it down. Getting closer, That's a little bit more. And there we go, 5.1 volts. Coming out of the buck converter. So we'll switch off now, and then we're going to unplug. Right, so looking at the base, we can't put the Pi this side because of the controller, but we do have enough space over here with this big gap here to put the Raspberry Pi into there. As I say, the Pi's going to go in this area here, and here's the Pi we made earlier. We've got power supply coming in from their buck converter. That's going to go to this side, and we've also got the USB to connect to the printer. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the Pi like so. That'll be fine. So what I'm going to do, because this case has got holes in it, I'm going to use that for a template. I'm going to screw the Pi base to the base of the DVD. So 2.5mm drill in there. Right, so I don't want to go all the way to the edge. I just want to come in just a little bit. And I think what I'll do, let's get some tape. Loads of tape. I don't want this to move at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently make some marks. I'm not looking to go all the way through on this pass. Right, so that's the holes marked. I think I actually made one hole there. So now off camera, I'm just going to drill these holes out completely. That's the holes drilled, and then on the back, or on the bottom, because there was a little bit of tear out, I then went over each hole with a, what's this one, 6.5mm drill bit, just to get the burrs off on the back there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount that like that. I'm going to get some longer screws to go all the way through. And what I did was I bought a screw set. It's 840 pieces, but it's all various different types of M2.5 screws with nuts and washers. So let's find a suitable screw. We'll go through this plate and hold these two sections together. And I think this one is going to be, so that's 2.5 by 12, and we're going to need 4 of them. So these are a little bit mixed up actually. So that's the same. I dropped it. So that's 1. That's the same. 2, 3, and 4. Oh, almost forgot. Let's get some washers going here as well. 4. I'll get one more out because I'll be able to drop one. So let's see if we can get this first one going. And we'll go through the base of the case, line it up with that one, and see if we can get this first one in. We should be okay for the rest. So I'm not going to screw that down too much because you can see there it's kind of lifting. So we're going to back that off. Let's see if I can do this. So I've got the bolt there. Grab the washer. Put the washer on the nut. No, I can't believe I did that with one hand as well. So just feeling my way through there. Just giving this a wiggle so I can find the screw hole. Yeah, there we go. So let's try another way. Let's try the washer on the ground first. Put the bolt through it. Get your nail underneath it. Oh, well, that's a lot easier. Of course, I could have put the washers on the screws before I started this. That would have been a lot easier. Then we'll just screw that into there. Nice and tight, that one. And then these ones, this will be reasonably tight. We're going into the aluminium block here, so feel free to give it a nice good tighten. And if you want, a bit of thread lock if you're worried, but I think this is going to be fine. Again, nice and tight, not too tight. You're only going into aluminium. Okay, so let's line this back up so the printer is pointing upwards this time. Power supply is still over here. So we've got to line that up just to make sure that it's not touching anything inside. Yep, that feels good. Nothing in there. Let's rotate the printer back round again so that the power supply is here, and we're going to mark out where this is going to go in relation to that. So I'm just going to turn that back round again. The front of the printer is this side. I've got the curve on the base to match it. Right, let's grab the ruler and let's see. From the inside of the case, we've got a little bit more. That's going to be about 12.5 centimetres or about 5 inches from the back. So I'll go 5 inches. Make a mark. That mark there is the edge of this power supply. So I can realistically put that there. They look isolated, but I don't want to test that. So I'm going to get some nylon stands and let's drill some 3mm holes for that. Right, there we go. A couple of 3mm holes. Again, 6.5mm to get rid of the burrs off the back. If you watch my Ultimate Fan Project version 4, I used some of these nylon standoffs to mount the ESP32 4 relay board. Glad I bought 260, really. These are quite short. These are even shorter. We'll have 2 of those. 2 of those. We'll have a couple of washers and a couple of screws. Also going to need a couple of nuts, Dave. Let's get these on here with a nut on. Big and tight should be enough. There's enough space for a nut there. Yeah. Right, just to make my life a little bit easier, let's cut that off of there. I'm going to cut it down anyway. Let's do that one first, otherwise it's going to be obscured. Let's redo this. So I'm going to have that cable there, and then we'll have, I think that'll be quite nice. Cut that off. Take that out of there, just in case I don't want to yank the USB port. Let's get the mat up. I don't want to solder over any of the pie or anything, just in case I dribble a bit of solder on there. Let's take these off. The solder I'm going to reach just. And yeah, I'm not going to bother putting any heat shrink on that negative there this time. there's not a lot around it to touch, and if it touches the base, that's probably ground anyway. Let's just bend that around. That lines up a little bit better. Give it a wiggle, that's fine. And then we're just going to plug that back in to there. Okay, we're going to give that a bend, give that a bend. I think while we're here, let's plug in these fans. So the 2 pins we want, we're going to miss one from the top, and then we want the next 2 down, with red being at the top. That way round, red and black, miss one, and go into those 2. Okay, this cable, I want to neaten this up a little bit. So I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to take these wires off. We're going to route it through and reconnect them back to that, I think. It's going to be the easiest thing to do. And then that way I can get my links right. So we'll come off of there. We've got enough space to go through there, I think. Let's see if I can get that through that. Yes, we can. Pull that through there. Back through there as well. Oh, looks like I can. Looks like I can, and I have. Okay, so I'm going to come underneath there, go to there, I think. Let's get rid of that. We'll line that up. Fan's going to go there, and then these wires will go to there. So I don't need much more on this than the fan can come out anyway. I think we'll do that. Give it a little bit of slack. We'll cut them off and resolder them onto there. Again, don't want to solder over the top of those, just in case we get any solder splatter. I could move it out of the way. It would be easier, I guess. So we'll have a nice blob of solder there. Nice blob of solder there. We'll trim those off. Okay, remembering that the 0 volts is along the bottom here now. The red being the plus side, and it's the same for both of these. So 0 volts at the bottom. The fan can go back in now. I think we're done with that. They blow towards the stickers, yeah. I think what I'll do is I'll just put a bit of tape down on there. And I'm going to use back of my nail just to make sure that it's completely stuck down. So the next job is to get the USB for the Raspberry Pi connected to the USB port of the printer. Now this is a USB-A and a USB-C. Now you could use a cable like this. This is obviously a USB-A to USB-C. This is going to stick out the side of the case, which looks a bit ugly, to be frank, and could easily get knocked. You could always buy a cable with a USB-C with a right angle, but you're still going to need to cut the case to get this round cable inside. And sure, you can do that. However, I found this little thing. And what this is a USB-C right angle, so nice and flat. We've got a USB-A and the 2 connect with a flat cable, which is nice. Like the Raspberry Pi camera, we've got a ribbon cable. This one's slightly different in that it's got a door. So we'll just lift that up. We'll put the cable in there, again, fingers down, and then just push that closed. And that will sit in the side of the printer, nice and flat. And then similar thing on the USB-A, again, lift the door up, get the fingers on the ribbon cable to match the pins there. So in this case, it's a downward direction. And then we'll just push that in there and then just clamp it down. So that's nice and flat. And that'll go in one of the USB-A connectors on the Raspberry Pi. Now, the thing is, the USB port on the printer and the USB port on the Pi are both supplying 5 volts. So what we need to do is we can't cut this cable. If you've got one of these, that's fine. You could strip off the insulation. For this cable, we can't do that because it's flat and there's more than 4 connections in there. So what we'll do, let's just take this out. We're going to work out which one of these 4 pins in here is positive and cut it. So like before, I've got my USB extension cable, plug that in there, and I believe it's the 2 outside ones. So let's have a look at that. And yeah, we've got 5 volts. And you can see there, it's positive. So it means my red one is on the correct pin. So we need to disconnect that top pin there. So let's unplug it first. Unfortunately, my cutters don't really reach the ends. It's been a while since I've had these. So let's see if the cutters that come with the 3D printer will get any better. I'm going to try and cut that leg right up against the case of the USB there. So let's see if we can get in. Well, there you go. It's come off. It's pulled the track up a little bit, but we don't really care. So I'm going to get rid of the metal, of the rest of that pin. So just make sure that there's nothing in there. Yeah, there's a little bit of tritus in there. We'll get rid of that. Yeah, that's definitely isolated there. Just to be thorough and get rid of any flux, so a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a brush. Just clean that up a little bit. Okay, let's have another look at that. Yep, that looks good. That's definitely isolated. Alternatively, if you don't want to go through the pain of cutting or isolating the 5 volts on your USB cable, you can get one of these from the PiHut. And what he's done here is a USB 5 volt bypass. So basically it connects all the data and the 0 volts, but disconnects the 5 volts. So it's a USB A to USB A female. And as I say, it isolates the 5 volts for you. We're almost done on the inside of this box. So I'm going to plug this into the bottom USB A port on there. And then this cable is going to run up to the outside of there. So it's going to go into the USB port that way. So I'm going to take that around this cable, and then I'm just going to run this underneath the side of the printer for the time being, just so I can keep organised. And then I think a bit of tape is required. So I've given myself plenty of slack on the other side of the case there. And I'm going to give myself enough slack here as well. Way too much tape, but it's there. I don't really want anything to hit that fan, obviously. And then the only other thing we got is the cable here. Now, there is a cutout in the base for the ribbon cable that goes to the screen. I'm not going to put any tape in here because this is going to be quite long and I want to be able to push this back in. A bit like this cable here, I want to be able to push that back in. So I don't want anything too close to the edge that's going to stop me from pushing this back in. Let's put this thing back together. So first of all, this cable here has got to go back underneath that metalwork there. This is quite sharp. I don't really like the idea of that, but that's how they made it, so that's why I'm going to put it back. I'll give myself some slack there, just so I can get to it. So I'm going to slide that back into, I don't want to snag anything, and then we'll just pull that cable back through as we feed it up, and then everything should fit in quite nicely. We'll line the ribbon cable up there, and then like we did before, we'll put the middle one in first. I'm going to lift this back up onto its top now, and then let's just bring this round. And once more, let's move that down so it doesn't fly across. And then for the ribbon cable, I'll have to wiggle that over a little bit. I'll say, because it's nice and flat, I can feed that back in. And then plug that in there. Yep, looks good. And then I'm going to put the SD card back in. Sometimes some of these printers save stuff to the SD card, so it's always best to have one in there, even though we're not going to use it. For mounting the camera, I've designed and printed a bracket for this particular camera. To mount this up, first of all, we're going to undo this again. And we'll put in the ribbon cable. Remember, fingers down. On the back piece, I've designed a little nodule for mounting it and a slot for it to go in. This is a friction fit. It's going to be very tight, so you may need to file this down a little bit just to fit that in. After a while, it'll loosen up like this has, so be a little bit of super glue just to hold that in place. Then the camera goes in there. That just sits in the base there. It's held off by those nuts, so there's no contact with the plastic itself. We'll get rid of the lens cap. The top piece, there's a slightly raised area there. That part is the bottom and lines up with the ribbon cable there. And then this just simply snaps together with a couple of clips, one either side. So I put that to one side. That piece is held to the arm via these two pieces and one of these GoPro nuts and bolts. So we'll take that off. One of these has a nut. So that goes on the right hand side, and then we'll put the bolt through the left hand side. Like so. And then put the nut in there and we'll screw it up. First time you do this, this will be quite tight. So put it all the way in, give it a good squeeze to pull that nut into there. And then what we're going to do is we'll open it up fairly loose. And then these two pieces go into the top of those two grooves there. You can see we've got little lugs that just fit in there. This is going to be quite tight. And then those two lugs will sit on the underside, and then we'll just tighten it up. And we've got a slight for different positions, and we can tighten that up. And I've made this bracket for this particular printer, and this will clip on to the vertical there. So just put it over that side first, and then just clip it on, and we'll just move the camera there, adjust its height. Once we booted up the printer and we're viewing the camera again. And then the last thing to do, we'll lift that up and we'll just feed that wire back inside the case. And again, I've just left a little slack there just so the cable's not being pulled. In part 2, we'll make a Home Assistant dashboard to monitor and automate the printer with a smart plug. Don't forget to subscribe. That's it. Thanks for watching.
Okay, I love you. Bye-bye.